Hey guys, welcome to our channel. We are Marc and Tania and we're going to be installing the Webasto heater. These are all the parts. It looks really intimidating, but Marc has gone through and he has labeled them, and we are ready to do the install and we want you to be a part of it. So stay tuned.
Hey guys, it's Marc. So today we are going to go through the installation of the Webasto gas-powered heater for our Promaster van. Not really sure how long this video is going to be. There are a lot of parts. As Tanya was saying, you open the box and it's just this overwhelming bunch of parts. We got ours from Vanlife Outfitters, by the way. They're based in Sarasota, Florida. There's a number of different places you can buy the heater from. It does seem like, depending on where you buy it from, you'll get different parts, and some of those parts aren't compatible with all other parts, so just be careful of where you buy it from. We had some other products that we bought through Vanlife Outfitters. We've called them a couple times. They've been extremely responsive, so we really liked working with them, so we went ahead and bought ours from Vanlife Outfitters in Sarasota, Florida. Now, Tanya is completely right. You open up at the box and wow, there is a ton of parts in here. A lot of them don't make sense. Can't really figure out what they are. So what we did was we basically set everything out on the counter. We put on the Vanlife Outfitters, kind of like their what's in the box video, and we went through every piece. And we literally went to every bag and we put a label on it of exactly what is in this bag. If it didn't come in a bag, we put it in a bag and we labeled it. So at the end, we kind of understood what every part was used for. We also came to find out that some of the things that you get, like these silencer kits for the combustion intake and exhaust hoses, are duplicates of the other combustion intake and exhaust hoses, so we can get rid of these, so we don't have to worry about these pieces. The kit also comes with a fuel tap for some vehicles. You don't need it for the Promaster, so that's another thing we were able to get rid of. So what we ended up is this. It's still a pretty big pile of stuff, but at least it makes sense as far as where it's got to go and what its function is. So we're going to start here. We're going to work toward installing it. So thanks for joining us. We really hit the subscribe button if you like this kind of content, and let's get started. So we are at the van, and the first thing we needed to do is pick a spot where this thing was going to go. So I was told that there's several spots right behind the front seat. So we got under here, and we decided actually to put it right there. So I took a Crisco container to make sure that this would be big enough for a 4-inch hole, and it is. Now I don't know if the 6 bolts are actually going to come through the metal or if they're going to get, I'm not sure if 3 of them are going to end up in here. So I may just put bolt nuts on those 3 bolts that pass through here, and if these don't pass through, then what I'll do is I'll just use Rivet nuts in those 3 locations and bolt it in from the top. But either way, I took a really long pilot bit, I screwed it through there, I drilled it through here, and it went completely through the floor, and I'll show you what it looks like inside. So inside the van, we've got the hole, and I've gone ahead and cut away all the flooring that was on top of the hole, made room for the heater, because it was recommended that this thing be installed directly on the van floor. So that's what we're going to do. So we've cut away. They actually make at least Vanlife Outfitters makes a kind of a collar. So if you want to put it through the finished floor, you can, but they recommended if you can get rid of the floor and bolt it right to the frame of the van, to the floor of the van, that would be the best thing. So we've gone ahead and cut that away. Now we've got to drill a 4-inch hole here, and we've got to put 6 holes. They're about a 1/4 inch each around it. So they give you 2 templates. They give you this template if you want to drill 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 800 holes. You can use this one, or you can use this one, which is much easier. And basically, you're going to drill 1 4-inch hole and then 6 1/4 inch holes. So it'll sit right on here. Like I said before, I think these 3 are going to pass through the floor of the van. I think these other 3 bolts are going to end up inside a piece of the framing, and we'll probably have to just put Rivet nuts in them to hold the heater down. that's what we're gonna do. So here is the deal. What we're trying to do is, so this heater basically takes air in from the cabin and shoots it out after it passes through this big combustion chamber that's in here. So you've got air coming in from the cabin and going out to the cabin as warm air that keeps you nice and toasty. Down here you've got air coming from outside that actually feeds the fire. So this is combustion air. You don't want this anywhere near the inside. So we're basically using this little guy is going to sit under here and make an airtight seal between the bottom of the van and this so that no combustion air can get back inside. So that's our goal right now. So that one actually goes outside. All right, so we know the 6 holes are in the right place. But on these 3, there's something to grab onto. On this side, there's nothing to grab onto, so we've got to get some Rivet nuts in there. So, it's going to make our job a little bit harder. So we've managed to put 3/4 20 Rivet nuts into these 3 holes. We actually should have done this for, if you end up having to do this, put these in first and then drill these holes around it, because these are not, you can't really play with these once these are in there. There's no play wiggle back and forth. These are some play back and forth. So these are in, they seem pretty tight. We'll need 1/4 inch bolts for these. These will take whatever we feel like putting in there, whether we have more 1/4 inch or we use the 6 millimeters that they have. And we had to off center the hole of the 4 inch hole just a little bit. We had it over there, it was getting a little off center, so we're gonna put it right there. So now we've got this massive, this was recommended by, I read this somewhere, it was recommended, the DeWalt Elite Series. So apparently it's really good for metal. I get the feeling it's gonna make a lot of noise and sparks and crap. So I'm gonna get my glasses. My Huh. That wasn't so bad. That went better than I thought. Okay. Okay. You ever see that scene from Under the Tuscan Sun? Just after her walls cave in, guys are like, okay. Okay. So now that the hole is cut in the van, we want to prep this thing to be able to install it. So the first thing you want to do is when you first get this wire right here is kind of folded and it's sitting in this input port. You're supposed to pull it out and feed it down through this slit that runs through here. I was recommended by a video that Vanlife Outfitters put out to drill a 1/4 inch hole right in the base of this so that that wire has something to sit in so it doesn't get crimped later on or cut later on. They said they've had that happen to other customers. So go ahead and cut the 1/4 inch hole and feed this wire down into there. Next thing is we're going to take this rubber gasket that only goes on one way, and you're going to feed this through here. And this is going to sit against the heater. Again, it only fits one way. All right, now that that's good and tight, we're going to install the plate. and the plate is held in place by 4 bolts. Now we've got to feed, I'm not sure, once we install this, I'm not sure that we're going to have room for the hoses. So what we're going to do is kind of do a little prep work. So this thing right here is the start of the fuel line. This is actually the fuel line. This is the kind of the connector for the fuel line. So this sits over this fuel intake port right here. And we go ahead and push that all the way down, and we'll drop a couple of these clamps on top of it. We'll drop another one here. Now this fuel line would normally go through here, but we've actually got to feed it through the van where the auxiliary port for the fuel tank is. So we'll do that inside the van. And once we get it under the van, we'll go ahead and install that here, and it'll get tightened in by one of these clamps as well. So we're going to hold on to these 2 parts for now. The only thing left to do is install these hoses. So the longer of the 2 hoses goes, this is the outtake, this is the exhaust for the combustion side. So this goes here, and we'll tighten this down with a clamp. And the other So the last thing to do now is feed our gasket through here, and this goes this way. That's it. Now we will go back to the van, and this will pass through the hole, and this will sit on top. Man, this is awesome. One thing we forgot, got to peel the sticker off. And then you'll stick this down onto the plate and make sure the holes line up. We actually ordered 2 of these in case one wasn't thick enough. We actually ordered a second one. Not sure if we'll need it, but that's it. So this is supposed to press tight against the van floor, because what we want to do is keep this especially from going back into the van. This is carbon monoxide, just like what comes out of your car exhaust. So you don't want this feeding back into where you're living. So it's important that this be really airtight to keep this from coming back into the van. So this is the setup that we're going to use to pull fuel from our Promaster's fuel tank and get it over to the Webasto heater. So hopefully if you followed our advice and labeled all your parts and everything, then these will probably make sense. So the first thing we've got is the Dorman fuel tap. So this is a quick connect. This simply just pushes down onto the port. The fuel tap, or the auxiliary fuel tap in the Promaster snaps into place. From there, we're going to go into a 90-degree hose connector with 2 clamps on it. The larger end actually fits into the quick connect. The smaller end fits into the fuel filter. You notice the fuel filter is oriented with the arrow pointing this way because that's the way the fuel is going to be going. And this is super important, right? Because even though the Webasto heater doesn't take up much fuel, it's really susceptible to contaminants in the fuel. So we want to keep the gasoline that feeds it nice and clean. Coming to the other end, we've got this fuel line connector with these 2 clamps on either end that's going to feed into here, and the other end is going to feed into some length of fuel line. The length of this fuel line Obviously, it's going to be longer than this. It's really going to depend on how far your filter and your pump are away from each other. So this will be some segment of fuel line. On the other end, we've got another fuel line connector with some clamps at either end. This goes into the fuel pump, and the fuel pump is also oriented to push fuel this way. Another fuel line connector at the end with another couple clamps, and then here's the rest of the fuel line, and this will go from our fuel pump into the bottom of the Webasto heater. Now this fuel line is protected by this loom that's going to be around it, and the fuel pump itself is powered by this harness where this piece fits into this port right here and powers this guy up. So we're going to connect a couple things together now. We'll connect a few of these pieces together. We'll connect these into our fuel pump, and then we will head over to the van and get it all installed. So this is the cover that holds the that hides the auxiliary port for the fuel tank, and I got this lifted up, and yeah, it was all nasty. I cleaned it so you'd think we have a really clean van, but it was all nasty in there. I vacuumed it all out and made it look like I just took the cover off. So now you know. These are, I just realized that I want to take this cover off, but these look like star bits, and I don't have any. So I got to go home. Dang it. Is there a way to do this? Can you turn this like Stargate or something? No. No. Okay, going home to get my star bits. All right, upon further inspection, these are actually Phillips head screws. I had to zoom in with my phone and see, but these are actually Phillips head screws, so false alarm. But I don't know how I'm supposed to get the one that's sitting under the driver's seat over there. All right, so these two are off, and I'm going to assume that two of them doesn't take the cap off. No. All right, we've got to figure out how to get that one out, and then we're home free. Okay, we have reached the promised land. I managed to just push this thing in a little bit and get a screwdriver in there enough to take all three screws out, and there's the lid, and there is the top of the fuel tank, all dirty. That right there, my friends, is the port that we have to hook our heater onto. So I heard that this just kind of pinches off. Aha! Look at that. I just made it look hard. Really, it's really easy. And you can instantly smell gas, so you know you're in the right place. All right, that's good. Now we go get our stuff to connect to it. In case you're wondering, this is not at all enjoyable. All right, so here's what I've done. I've stuck a Rivet nut here, right here. I put one right here. There was actually a hole already, so just, am I even showing it? Right here, and then I stuck one in this kind of support bracket back here. I don't know if you can see it. I don't even know if I'm aiming the camera right, but I figure one of these places is probably a good place to put the, gosh almighty, a raised shop. Just having the van about 2 feet higher would be great. I figure between here, here and here, I can find a place to put the fuel pump. So we're going to try a couple different places and see what works best. So now that I've got the fuel pump pretty much positioned, I've come back here. I'm going to figure out how to best stick this onto here. I wonder if this should have gone under there. pretty good right there. So snaps right into place, 90-degree elbow, fuel filter, and then the rest of the fuel line goes out that way toward the bottom of the van. So I've decided to put the fuel pump here, really for no other reason except the vanlife outfitters guys do it. I think they actually put it here, but it's pretty close, it's within a couple inches. So I'll be able to run the fuel line, which comes here inside the loom, right to this spot, and on the outside we'll run it right to here, which is the heater. So it'll be a pretty short run of fuel line, which hopefully will be good. I'm going to leave this a little bit longer, and I'll figure out how to route this, because if I end up having to move the pump, I don't want this thing to be too short, so I'll make it a little long to start, and I can always cut it later or reposition it if needed. Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't like it under here, in case you're wondering. So before we install the heater into the floor, there's a couple little things we still have to take care of. So one of them is we've got these two little wires that need to be pushed into this thing on this end, actually. And these are what's going to feed power to the pump from the heater. So the polarity of these apparently doesn't matter, so we're just going to stick these in here and make sure they're seated in all the way. And they're sticking out there. That will end up going into here and powering the other end of which goes into the pump. So this is how the pump will get electricity. The only other thing we have to do is we're going to feed some, because it's really hard to access this from underneath the van, we're going to feed some fuel line into this connector here. We're going to tighten it. That should be good. That's everything we need for this. So we've got our wire in place coming from the Smart controller that's eventually going to feed into our main wiring harness. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but for now we're just going to get this thing put in the hole and mount the pump underneath. All right, figured I'd give you an update on where we are. It is really tight under the van, so I don't know what this is going to sound like or what it's going to look like, but I'm going to try to show you. So we've got the heater coming in over here, and everything is connected. The exhaust fuel is connected to the fuel pump. We're waiting on, I got to prime this side of it. This is actually the power cable. I've got to prime this end of the fuel line. This was what comes from the gas tank. I've got a prime, and I've actually got a syringe coming that's meant to do this, so it'll be here in a little while. I've kind of bundled up the wires here, tried to keep it away from some of the hotter areas, at least I hope. The exhaust, and I couldn't really film this because depending on where you put your heater is going to depend on where you run these hoses. So I've run this intake hose down here, kind of clamped it to a couple things, and I put the silencer in this heat shield. I don't know if this is a heat shield or if this is just to keep the debris from the road from getting in here, but I've got it in here. I don't know if it can stay in here or not, but that's where it is for now. The exhaust is clamped. I just stuck in a bunch of 1/4-20 Rivet nuts here. This is clamped to this vertical piece, and then the line goes to another point that I Rivet nutted. And you can see it's all on a downward slope. So this whole thing slopes down and then comes out, and it's a constant downward slope, and it goes to the very edge of the van. That way we don't have any combustion gases pooling up under here. So I think the next step is to go inside and hook up the electrical and just wait until we can get the fuel pump. The heater itself is not completely secured yet. I just have to go home and get another wrench so we can hold it on top while we screw it from the bottom. But that's it for down here, as much as I love being under the van in the 90-degree Georgia weather. I'm gonna get inside and do some wiring. The only thing left to do under the van is to attach the incoming fuel on. So I want to prime it, and to keep from sucking a bunch of gas into my mouth, I bought this thing on Amazon for like $5. So it should be able to pull some gasoline through, because we want this thing filled with gas and not air, or else it's going to cause, I think, faults up front. So let's see if this actually works. Ah, look at that. I see the gas. All right. Now we can disconnect it and connect it right here to the incoming side of the pump.
Look at what my hubby did.
Huh, yeah.
Dun 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 dun.
I learned a valuable lesson today. When you prime a hose and the gas starts coming, it don't stop. Don't stop at all. So it just keeps coming. I had to jam the hose into this fuel pump while the gas was pouring out of it. But lesson learned. Somehow my father did this. He just put the thing in his mouth, suck on it, and it would start coming out. I don't know how we did it. Anyway, all that's left to do at this point, we've got all the hoses connected outside. The fuel pump is connected. The only thing left to do is a little bit of electrical in here. So we've got the main wiring harness here. This piece goes into the actual Webasto unit with the flat piece toward the inside. And heck if I know how far it's supposed to go, but it seems good. Alright, that's back on. Since we are using the Smart Temp Controller, we don't have the rheostat controller. This is the end that comes from the Smart Controller. I've got to be honest, we're a little confused because on the video from Van Life Outfitters, it shows another wire that we can't seem to find. So I'm wondering if there's another end of this, and I'm wondering if this doesn't get used when you use the Smart Temp Controller. We're not upgrading from the rheostat controller. We never had it, so I'm hoping that this end gets used because we don't know what to do with it. So we're just going to continue along with this. These two pieces go together here. So we've got this piece that fits into the large black opening here, and these should snap into place. You've got this white thing with this terminal resistor on here. This comes off. Somehow it comes off. There we go. And then this attaches into here. And this wire is not used. I made a note of that. So at this point, everything is connected. All we've got to do now is connect our power source. So what I'm going to do is cut these and splice them together with, because these don't go off. If these went to the battery terminals, I could see using these, but they're not. So let me get my wire. And this is the moment of truth. Now booting up. It's doing something. And keep in mind it's 90 degrees here, so I don't know what it's going to take for this thing to come up online, but I've heard it takes about a minute before that starts working. So why am I at the van at 6:30? Actually, it's about 7 o'clock in the morning. Because later today it's going to be like 80 degrees. When we tried to test the Webasto heater yesterday, it was 94 degrees. That's why I couldn't even get the thing to turn on. So right now it's about 70. So I figure I could probably get it to work. So we're going to fire it up and see if we get the heat pump working and get some heat in here. Well, I can tell you this thing is running, and it is cranking some seriously hot air. So you can see how much it's pushing. Yeah, it's pushing some serious air. And it is really hot. Let's see what it looks like outside. That is also getting really hot. It's not very loud. I guess that's because of the mufflers on here. Certainly you can hear it running, but it's not overly noisy. Wow, this is working really well. So we'll place a cabinet on top of this with some ventilation, and then a duct will run from here through the toe kick of the cabinet and come out about right here. The input side, I'm not sure if we're going to leave it just like that, or if we're also going to run a bit of duct work from there to the edge of the cabinet where the toe kick is going to be, and then just have the duct right there, so the air would go in and then come out. But either way, it's working. So now that the project is done, what would we have done differently? So first of all, we would have done this much earlier in the build process. Having to work around walls, having to work around the subfloor really was not fun at all. So do this much earlier in the build process when you don't have a bunch of stuff to have to work around. The second thing to consider is that the Smart Temp app on the phone, I can't show it to you because my phone is right there, but it works really well. Works really, really well. So you don't have to worry so much about where you put the Smart Temp Controller, because my guess is you'll be doing everything through the Bluetooth app. So make sure if you get this Smart Temp Controller upgrade, you want the 3.0 version that has the Bluetooth capability in it. Other than that, the project went much smoother than we expected. I was actually dreading it. The first time I opened the box, I'm like, nope, and I put it away. And I think I did that 2 more times, but at the end, we kind of labeled everything like we said. We really did a lot of homework on how the thing needed to be installed, and it actually was a lot easier than we expected. So don't be intimidated by this project. It's a little bit of work, but it's a really satisfying project to do as well. So that is it. You're not going to have a hard time doing it, so don't be intimidated. So thanks so much for joining us. We are going to be back soon. If you could see down there, you'd see a lot of plumbing stuff. Tanya loves when I put plumbing and van stuff all over the kitchen. So there's all this plumbing stuff, and there's some materials to secure the batteries. Plus, we're going to go through a walkthrough of the entire electrical system, all within the next couple weeks. So thank you for joining. Please click that subscribe button if you haven't already subscribed to the channel. Give us a thumbs up. Feel free to leave a comment if you want, and we will talk to you soon.
Hi, welcome to Marc and Tania.
How did you get that wrong?